Dharma greetings. My name is Rahula, and I'm one of Bhante Candana's students. And just before you get to listen to one of his amazing discourses, I just wanted to share with you that Bhante is a wandering monk. So he has no home and he purely relies on donations of dana by followers and by the community to survive, just for the bare essentials. So if you feel of value, please feel free to share after the video and enjoy. Thank you.
Since having landed on this earth, from my earliest childhood, as far back as I can now recall, I notice how we are always given something to be considered our counterpart, our dance partner, if you will, an enemy. The receiving end of our strong emotions, to the point where it has played, or it does play, the role of giving us a purpose for being, giving us a purpose for living. And what that involves is to be, well, it involves a lot of work, it involves sacrifice, it involves years, in fact your entire life. Because what it's attached to is this promise that once I eliminate you, the enemy, once I get rid of you, this uncomfortable thing, then everything is going to be just dandy. Everything's just going to be amazing. Everything's just going to be perfect. So we start like that, and we continue living like that, and we die with that. I wanted to address the issue of, or role of, having enemies today, because it's everywhere. You know, there are political enemies. That party over there is different than our party over here. Interesting why they call it a party. Party at whose expense? The other's expense. There's always some fighting going on. You know, you go to, ever since I was a child, you know, you would go to houses of worship, let's say, and there's something being said about the other over there, those people over there, that group, that crazy people over there. They are the problem. If they just did not exist, man, it would be such a wonderful paradise here. This has been going on for eons. It is simply perpetuated by ignorance. There's always going to be the other. Always. So long as there is the identification with who you are. I am this. The moment, you know, one wonderful thing that happens when people start traveling for the first time, and especially putting themselves in, you know, I noticed this when as a layman, I would travel here, there, alone. I would notice something in me happen, in my gut, almost like butterflies in my stomach, in my gut, as they say. You're not sure. You're not 100% certain. Why? Because you're vulnerable. You're becoming vulnerable. Why? Because you are in a new dimension. You are surrounded in the 6 directions with things that are unfamiliar, especially if it's a really foreign place, foreign culture, different streets, different neighborhoods. It doesn't have to be you traveling far. It could be going to another city from where you live. And those sensations of feeling almost rootless, not ruthless, but rootless, having, as if you've eradicated yourself, removed yourself. You're not so heavy, bottom heavy. You're open. And those butterflies in the stomach, in that sense, in that context, I see it as those strong walls, those heavy, thick walls of sense of identity or identification coming loose. This is who I am. This is, especially if you place yourself in the territory, in the vicinity, in the milieu, in the surrounding, in the world of these other people whom you consider your enemy. Now, of course, enemy is a strong word, but maybe not in this time period. It's become such a household terminology. Everybody seems to be forced to choose an enemy, even children. Having a strong position against these other people that you might never come to know, get to know, see, or learn from, or speak to them in person. Nevertheless, we give ourselves the right to go ahead and make them our bona fide enemies that need to be removed from the face of the earth. This is why it's so dangerous in those places, houses of worship, schools, or any type of institution, where the underlying, and today's universities have become that as well, because what positions you hold, it's no longer just limited within the confines of a specific sectarian environment, such as a house of worship, whether it's a church, a mosque, a synagogue, a temple. No, it's no longer there anymore. It's the circles of people, communities, who you hang out with, basically, whether in person or virtually, online, in social settings, because everybody is concerned about what others are going to think of me. Why? Because how you think and what you think of me might be detrimental, might be bad to my sense of identity. Again, we come back to the self. This is why it's so important to constantly look at the personality that we hold so dearly. That is the sacrosanct. That is the holiest of holies. There's nothing holier than that. I don't care what people say, oh, I believe in this higher power. No, ultimately they care about one thing. Most people care about one thing, and that is their personality view. Their personality. It's so hard to get rid of. And that's why no one can, in this tradition of ours, in Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, we are taught by the Buddha how it's impossible to attain to Nibbana, awakening, without having untied, loosened up that shackle of personality view, We call it in Pali Sakkaya Ditthi, the view of a substantially independent personality within, unchanging thing that I call myself. So enemies have everything to do with you. I used to struggle growing up in the Middle East, being the, grandchild of, one of the grandchildren, that is, of survivors of a genocide who made it through so many hardships, through several different countries, where all was lost. All the assets were lost. And then you go to another country, and then you are born, raised in a country that ends up being torn up with war. I'm referring to Lebanon now. So you have a hard time to pinpoint as to who your enemies are, because they keep adding up. So it's no longer just one enemy who was the author of your genocide, all that, and then there's another enemy, there's another enemy, there's another enemy. I thought that would be it. But now, after over 50 years of that, I see it is incessant. We're always being presented with enemies. Now, don't get me wrong. When you need a challenge. You need a challenge. Anyone who's ever done any martial arts will know the value of, or even, let's say, boxing, contact sports. It's different when you're shooting the ball, let's say basketball, on your own, doing your free throws on your own, versus going one-on-one with someone who's blocking you, who's stopping you from getting that shot. Martial arts, even better. That's truly a contact sport, because if you don't look, if you're not paying attention, the enemy, the opponent, is going to land their punch, their kick. So you have to be very, very diligent, vigilant, in fact, to see what's happening and be in command of your muscles and your body and your limbs. Time and space, that spatial awareness has to be there with you. So suddenly something happens where you become extremely aware of yourself, probably for the first time. Probably for the first time being aware that you exist in time and space. You don't live in your world. It pulls you out of your personality. One of the best healing methods that I know of, when a person is lost in depression, for example, in their own concepts, in their own what-ifs, worries, concerns, terror-causing, which, by the way, is the majority of the population of this planet now. So one of the best ways that I know how to really cure, not attend to it or treat it, cure it fast, is a method that ancient cultures would use, which is engaging the full awareness of the body and mind together, while subjecting the person into series of situations where they are facing the unknowns. Because when a person is depressed, anxious, worried, frustrated, fearful, which is what they have been placing our human society in, all these new wars that they keep coming up to create, it's now open. they're no longer hiding it, the powers that be, that this world will be in a perpetual war, one war after the other, without you knowing where, and they will obviously create triggers and seemingly justifiable reasons, even for a commonsensical person to go and say, well, yeah, that was justified. No, it's never justified. They are playing. Anyhow, that places the mind of human beings in constant state of panic and trauma. So they keep re-traumatizing us. That's why I was mentioning yesterday to you about how trauma itself, when done, when approached with wisdom, can be a blessing, because it can really, it's a springboard for awakening, as the examples I shared with you. So one of the best ways, therefore, to address this is to engage the body to the full living experience. One of the best arenas for that, in those days, and in some places they still do, like the shamans, they send, or some tribes, I know Native American, Indian tribes do this still, not as much as before, but they would send that person out into the wild, into the wilderness. It's in Aboriginal Australia, I believe it's called the walkabout. It was originally to go and find yourself. The shamans do the same thing. So that means you're going to go ahead and supply food for yourself as well. While you're away, you need to discover yourself. And that was also, the way I understand it, the basis, the foundation of, even in Western culture, Western civilizations, where our ancestors would send, whoever could afford it obviously, the person to go ahead into the lyceum, into the earliest form of academic structures that we find, let's say in Greece or in Egypt, and they would be exposed to so many different modes of knowledge, ways of understanding. So it's a full sensorial, psychological, emotional, spiritual, existential, viscerally alive experience of life. That's why the person would come out truly transformed. It wasn't something heady, as they say, intellectual. No. That's what Western civilizations have turned into, especially during the last 150, 200 years, when we moved away from the land. The Industrial Revolution, it was a revolution to put money in people's, in the rich elites' pockets, basically, make them even richer, and disconnect us from the land and from the healing power of what the full experience of life could give you. So what is it that we can do? Because you're not living next to a jungle, you're not living in the wilderness or by the wilderness. One of the best methods that I've discovered, and this is something I would encourage patients to do if they were feeling healthy and strong and their physicians have approved it, that they are able to physically function and place themselves in those situations, and go and start a martial arts class. I still do recommend it to individuals who have different, difficulties. I've sent several individuals to go and check out jiu-jitsu classes. Jiu-jitsu, martial arts. And after some trepidation, in some cases I know one person where it took him about a year and a half, I think, to finally decide, after all the excuses were spent. And they reached a point where they said, you know what, let me go ahead and try. Because when you're working with an opponent, You're no longer shadow boxing, you're imaginary. Because the imaginary enemy, well, it's imaginary. Who's imagining it? You are. So even the enemy is working according to your dictates. That's not an enemy. You need to put yourself in circumstances, and when you are placed in circumstances that are foreign to you, it causes the brain, it causes your own mind to come up with ways of understanding. You start applying tools that you never knew you had. In fact, you have to make new tools for understanding the situation. Now, in the process of you doing that, what you're doing is you're going back to the drawing board. You are starting from scratch. You know, there was this drawing pad with magnetic, strips and things. It's like I forgot the name of it, but my nephews had them when they were growing up. So you draw on it, and then you just move this thing, and it just wipes it clean. And then you draw on it again. You can use your fingers, you can use whatever, and it draws. So it's constantly. So you always have scratch paper, as it were, at hand. You can erase it and start again. I forgot the name of it. It escapes me. But anyhow, it's not important. What is important is how agile can you become, how versatile can you become in dropping what you know when you see the circumstances require you to become inventive, require you to become versatile. If you're holding on to this idea that this is who I am, this is how it's supposed to be, then you're going to be facing a monumentous struggle with a powerful opponent. The moment you are giving that up, and that's what it means, wiping the slate clean. You know what, I don't know, let me try this, let me try that, let's see, and in Aikido they do this wonderfully, where you use what is happening, the energy that is being placed upon your body. If you do not conceptualize, if you do not say, well, if they do this, if they advance like this, if they strike like this, then I'm going to do this. If you've done any martial arts, you would know that's you're already lost. You cannot plan anything. You can practice and really become in tune with your body, have your muscles become attuned to whatever happens, and then you let it be. You give it up to nature. The opponent is going to allow you, so long as you're fully there, not in your head, your body will know what to do. Just like the traveler who's completely vulnerable in this absolutely new frontier of experience. Sensorially, 6 directions, new experiences coming. The less you hold on to, well, this is my culture, that's where I come from, you're gonna, if you hold on to that, you're gonna have a hard time. And that's why many people will keep needing to have enemies outside of themselves. So it's very natural for them to look at that person over there and see them as my sworn enemy. And if you have carefully listened, you would understand how, the mechanism as to how that enemy came about, how we basically created that enemy. We did. We created that opponent. Why? Because of my adherence to, my attachment to, my stubbornness in wanting to hold on to the sense of I. This is me, this is what I want, this is my desire, my world that I'm not willing to relinquish. And guess where the real enemy is then? It's inside you, nowhere else. You will never discover an enemy on a battlefield. Okay? No enemy is waiting for you over there on that border, wherever that border might be for you. There, the neighbors, those enemies. Oh, that country over there, down there, up there, this way, that way. That colleague of mine over there who's always scheming to get me fired, etc., etc. We all have our own enemies, outside, externally. But when you carefully and wisely look at the situation, you see that there's actually one real, genuine, truly genuine enemy. Because those individuals outside of you could change. And boy, do they change the moment you have a different approach. It's a treasure that is untapped. This person that you're calling my enemy, over there, placing him in this solid metal box and calling it, you are an enemy to me, to my survival. It's an untapped resource. Resource of what? Of life. Well, that enemy over there, who I'm killing, who I'm terrorizing, who I'm brutally assaulting for decades, generations, or for centuries, hating, is an untapped, unopened world of wonderful possibilities, of growth. Because they have things that I need as individuals, as people, for my growth. And guess what? I have some things that they need for their growth as people, as beings. But in a world where it's all about finances, world economics, how much I own is who I am and how important I am. And that's how you control populations in this era that we're living in. They have been doing this for centuries. That it's whoever owns the resource. This is what they teach you at universities, you know. You go economics classes and just any resource, any university, this is ultimately what they're teaching. Whoever controls the resources controls the world. And now the resources, you know, became the information. Whoever controls the information controls, is in power. That's the true weapon. And they've been using this. They've been using this incessantly and successfully. But you need methods of execution. The methods of execution always shows up in the form of the spreading of lies and concepts of separation, of instigation of battles and wars and divisions among people. This is how they do, because this is all acting that's going on in the world. Name any of these world leaders, any one of them. It's all acting. They're the best actors. Hollywood can't even hold a candle next to these people. That's why they're in those roles. Because if you're going to convince 8 billion people plus of what's happening, you need to have good actors who are executing your plan or plans of dividing the people. So you give them excuses and you give them concepts. And the concepts are the things that make you sustainably maintain the presence of an enemy outside of you. This is key, because you will never discover an enemy in the battlefield. Outside, where there's bombs, there's bullets being fired. It's all inside. The worst enemy is inside of you. If there is a battlefield, that is the battlefield, because there is no ceasefire in that battlefield, because you're always going against your defilements, the impurities of the heart, the mind, within you. It's not outside of you. That's why Lord Buddha never, ever promoted one side versus the other. One time, the Sakyans and his ancestral home, whose people he was going to be, he was going to be their king before he relinquished the crown, becoming the king himself. So he walked away from that. But when he did become the Buddha, the awakened one, after some time, there were some issues that had started between the royal family members, and suddenly there were two divisions. One group of the family, and they were like in the hundreds and maybe thousands, and on the other side, the same. They were ready to go to war. They, in fact, go to war. There's a battlefield. There is this separation now. There's a river separating them, and the whole reason was there had been a drought, and it had started by one farmer taking a little bit too much of the water that was allotted by the king or the municipality, the principality of that region, and the other farmer whose crops are now, struggling because they're not getting the water that was allotted to him, because the other guy he's stealing water basically. He goes and tells them, please, friend, don't do this, because I'm suffering. I have kids to feed, I have crops to water. So they get into a fight. The one who was stealing the water yells and screams and curses at the landowner, who happens to be eventually the prince of this clan, and he turns around and he curses at his own lord, the other farmer's lord, because they were all, cultivating the land. The farmers, they were supposed to pay dues and things to their lords, who were paying to their princes, to their lords, and then all the way to the kings. So this pretty much ricochets pretty fast, intensifies pretty fast, and now the whole kingdom is divided and they're fighting. So cousin against cousin. And the news gets to Lord Buddha, and he goes there. And they're about to go to war, and Lord Buddha appears. And there was a it's a slight, like a dome-shaped sandy dune, almost like an island where the river was flowing. So Lord Buddha appears there, and he sits in meditation, quietly. He doesn't say anything. Now the drawn swords go back into their scabbard, into their sheath. Okay, they wait. They wait. And this goes on for a while. Eventually they see that the Buddha is not going to be leaving anytime soon. And they both know who he is. He is their senior cousin. He was supposed to be their king, both of them, and he is their kin. So finally, the rulers of both parties, they come down from their horses and they start walking because it's disrespectful. And they go through the water. I think they swim or they, anyhow, they approach somehow, and they say, Bhante, please, could you leave the premises? Could you please go? We can't fight like this with you here. It's disrespectful. We can't do that. We're too self-conscious, basically. And Lord Buddha says, what are you doing? What is it that you're doing? What is the price of water compared to price of blood? Which one costs more? And both agree, both generals or kings say, Bhante, the price of blood is far superior to water. And he says, there you go. You're ready to kill each other. You're ready, both cousins, you're brothers. You're ready to spill blood over water? And that's what we're seeing now. Over land. Land that's never going to be anybody's. That's why Native Americans, Indians were stunned when the white man came to the United States and they said, we need you to sell this land. Well, they look around and it's like, are these guys crazy or what? How can I sell the land, the earth, the sky, the air, the water? How can I do that? This goes contrary to what capitalists are doing. That's what, World Economic Forum and BlackRock, all these crazy people are doing. They don't understand that none of it is ours. But in the meantime, we can actually rip each other's hearts out, trying to get it, and miss the whole point of life. But fortunately for these two princes, these two generals, they see and they say, yes, Bhante, you are correct. And they both go home. There's, and the country goes back, the drought is over and they're fine. But we don't have a Buddha. We don't need to have a Buddha for us to be doing this. If each of us actually does this, due diligence in looking at what is the true enemy that I have. Is it the one that I was granted by my parents, by my culture, by my society, by my school, by my university? What they throw at me? Or do I have absolute 100% final decision-making power over whom I consider to be my enemy or not? That's when you can start to live, really start to live. That's where you start to become free. Yes. And this is why it's so dangerous when we unquestioningly take in, accept, gulp down concepts thrown at us, ideologies. The real battlefield is not the dojo even. It's a wonderful place. Today, that's a wonderful place to discover where you go in, whatever kind of martial arts you're doing. It's better than, I used to be a trainer, but before that I was a martial artist. But I know the difference between working out on your own, which can be quite powerful, but when you're doing work with another person, that takes it to a totally different level. And anyone who's ever done contact sports knows this to be true. Because your weak spots are going to be exposed by that person. Because guess what? They are not prisoners to your mind like you are. They're not fallen. Then they will not fall for your tricks, your mind's tricks, that you constantly fall. Your true enemy is the one you have, the one you hold so dearly inside of your heart, that dictates what is what. Meanwhile, it's completely divorced from life. And this is why people really need to communicate with each other. That's why one of the worst things that happened during the last 3-4 years was when people were forcibly pushed to become isolated. That's the worst thing you do. The whole idea of quarantining healthy people. It's a terrible thing to do. Terrible. That is the true crime. Especially children, separating children. How are they going to develop their immune system? Especially the immune system of the mind, of the heart. Because that, by isolating them, you control what they are seeing. They will be subject to what you give them. If there's no communication, in person, live, when they don't feel your energy, they don't hold your hand, they don't look at your eyes, not the ones that you're, on the screen, while you're also using your eye to look at them with the camera. These are not conspiracy theories, by the way. This is a fact. The sooner we realize, the better, the faster and the quicker we're going to become independent of these nonsensical methods of driving us back to the Stone Age, back to ignorance. These people are not the enemy, whomever you're calling your enemies. Every day should be an exciting chapter for you to discover. The moment you open your eyes, it is an opportunity for you to get to know your mind. Hello. You can say hello when you wake up. Hello. I see you. The moment, can you get your mindfulness, your awareness to lock on, as they say? Quickly as possible. Can you catch that first thought? Because however you sleep, whatever thoughts you're lost in before you go to bed, that's how you're going to wake up. It's there saying, even if you don't say hello, it's saying hello. Oh, there you go. Okay, so as I was saying, that's what the mind loves to do. As I was saying, so observe. How is this helping me now? Is another thing that I would give to patients over the years. A negative thinking pattern, toxic, that drives you down energy-wise, psychologically, emotionally, physically. You don't feel that much energized. Ask yourself, with that stream of thought comes in, ask you, how is this helping me now? And if there's absolute silence, I would say, if there's only crickets and nothing else, drop it. It's not helping you, therefore. But in answer to your question of, well, this is you asking yourself, how is this helping me now? When you have another stream of reasons, well, it's helping me to become more alert, it's okay, then that's probably a good stream of thought. It's not a bad pattern, it's not toxic. Remember, your real enemy is nowhere else. It's not in that different complexion, not that ethnic background, person who has that, not that person over there with your ancestral issues, that your grandparents and whatever. Why? Why should I hold it against them? I accept everyone. My ancestors have gone through so much. As I said in the beginning, genocide. Okay. But that was then. I have to look at you, the enemy, and see you, your values. I don't care about the past ancestors, both and mine, ultimately. I am here. You are here. Can I look at you? Can I see you? Can we be human to each other? Can we be kind? Can we be generous? Can we be loving towards each other? Because if I'm able to do that, then it means I have beaten my enemy, real enemy. And whatever you do, ultimately, of course, I'm going to be smart and wise enough to not place myself in situations where I am allowing or encouraging ignorance to perpetuate itself. Because you do have individuals who are not of that level. I get it. I get it. But I'm not going to just do all or nothing thinking here. So many good people are being shunned for the few. And you will find those few corrupt seeds everywhere, including in your culture, in your family even maybe. Okay, let's not go too far. So look for the enemy not on the battlefield.